Goedenavond, dames en heren. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first English language spoken meetup in Haarlem, with as a topic for today, technology as religion. A few months ago, there was this documentary by Hans Busstra investigating spirituality in the age of artificial intelligence. Let me first introduce the three speakers, or ask them to introduce themselves. Pablo, please, could you introduce yourself briefly?
So my name is Pablo Nunez Palma, and I'm a filmmaker and also researcher. And I made, together with Bram Lokman, an artwork with iFilm Museum that is called Jambot. And Jambot is a computer program that finds inspiration on trending news that are circulating every day online, and based on this news, it searches for material from the iFilm Museum, and it creates experimental films. And it creates every day about 10 a day, and it also publishes on social media. So until today, Jambot has created more than 20,000 of these short experimental films. Well, you can see it in the website. It's www.jan.bot.
Perfect, that should be easy to remember. Stefan, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Stefan Buijsman. I'm a philosopher. I've mostly worked on mathematics, but I'll be starting at TU Delft soon to work on philosophy of artificial intelligence. And I also do some popular science writing. So last June, a book of mine on AI explaining how it works and what we should be worried about, and that it's not so scary as you might think, was published, called Alsmaar Intelligenter.
Thank you very much. Suyin?
Yes, thank you. My name is Suyin Timp. I'm from I'm Digital, and we at I'm Digital want to create more awareness about data and AI, because it's changing and it's going to change the world a lot more, and we don't think enough people know about this. So our goal is to reach 1 million people, professionals, to create more awareness on how to live and work with this subject.
Well, that's wonderful. And my name is Pim Hasselhacker. I work at the AI department of the Radboud University in Nijmegen, and I will be the moderator of this evening. So before we start talking about AI and religion, we first go to watch a few fragments of the documentary of a few months ago, VPRO Tegenlicht.
Is there a difference between biological Darwinian evolution and the evolution of artificial intelligence and machines?
I doubt it. I think Darwin's ideas were stunningly good, and I've never seen anything yet that contradicts them. And so my answer to that is no, I don't. I think it's Darwin rules.
But in Darwin's vision, what would Darwin make of our technological age? Do you think he would just say, oh, that's a very natural follow-up of biological life?
Well, it is in a way. Look at your little drone. That's evolved very rapidly compared with a bird.
Is it battery operated?
Exactly.
They could have used those in the Battle of the Atlantic, you know.
In zijn laatste boek beschrijft Lovelock een nieuw tijdperk, het Nova Scene, waarin artificiële intelligenties uitdagingen als het klimaat kunnen oplossen. Maar in het Nova Scene is het een illusie om te denken dat we als mens nog controle hebben over AI's.
Do we have to control them? Perhaps that's the wrong way of looking at it. We plant crops to grow food. We don't notice that it's doing all sorts of other things. We initially planted crops to produce food to eat, but it's also taking CO2 out of the air, which is enormously important for regulating the earth.
In Lovelock's visie zijn de chips in al onze digitale apparaten een levensvorm die zich in het systeem van Gaia razendsnel voortplanten en evolueren. Een teken van succes volgens Darwin.
I think Darwin put his rule of evolution very well once. He said, the species that leaves the most progeny is the one that succeeds.
Critics say that humans are conscious and they have feelings, and machines are not conscious, they don't have feelings, right?
How do we know? Because you can't test it very easily, because those damn things make themselves to a large extent.
It's a draw. The position is obvious to any human player who knows the game. It's obviously a draw because the black pieces are trapped. They can't escape. You can see that. How they move around, the bishops cannot get through. They cannot take the white pawns. The knight can't get out because he's blocked with these 3 pawns. So it's stuck. So to a human being, it's obviously a draw. But then I guess, how does the computer work? Well, I don't know. But I imagine it does. If he goes there, I go there. If he goes there, blah, 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 up to some point. And then it says, is the position better or not? How do I know if it's better? Counts the pieces. And then the score tells it it's a win for black. So it does something incredibly stupid. It either releases a pawn, or if you keep your king here, the only thing it can do is to sacrifice the bishop. Otherwise, it's a draw. Now, it still calculates it's a win for black.
So it does something stupid in hope of winning?
Yes. So it does something completely stupid, namely to sacrifice the bishop in the hope of winning. It demonstrates how a certain amount of understanding of what you're doing can be better than all this experience that the computer has. So the thing that worries me is that people believe that because they get so good at what do they call deep learning and these things, that somehow they're superior to us. But they don't understand. They're not intelligent. The word artificial intelligence to me is a misnomer. It's artificial cleverness, if you like. But it's not intelligence, because intelligence involves understanding. It involves
And there's
feelings.
no proof yet of a computer that shows a form of understanding.
That's correct. They don't understand anything. And the chess position is an example that it doesn't understand chess.
Is mainstream AI thought then a form of religion? I mean, they hope for something that is not true, and they sort of adhere to dogmas that aren't proven?
Yes. I think that's the other worry. You see, one worry is that they do get so good that people lose confidence in humanity, in a sense. And that's a depressing thing. And they say, science tells us we're all computers. Science does not tell us we're all computers.
Yes, so this was the documentary Technology as Religion by Hans Busstra, broadcasted in January, I believe. So a first question to all 3 of you, and let's start with Pablo. So how do you see the connection between technology and religion, or AI and religion? Do you see a connection?
Well, I do see a connection from many sides. Maybe and probably we're going to talk more about this during the evening, but something that we did with Jan Bot was trying to approach this relationship that we have with AI and with data, that we tend to mystify technology. In the same way as we have mystified religion, and it's very essential to religion to have areas that are, so to say, hard to access in order to really have an experience of profoundness. The way how we are approaching and experiencing AI and data is well, by not really knowing what is exactly going on there. And we talk about artificial intelligence as a form of replication of human intelligence, but now in other bodies, in machine bodies. And something that we did with Jambot, if you go to the website and you watch the movies are complete nonsense for humans. They were made very intelligently, in the sense that we used different software of artificial intelligence, some of the latest that was available, let's say in the year 2019, to really find data, to really organize it, and to make very smart selections of footage. And we let the computer make all these connections and produce these films. Still, for humans, they don't make any sense. And what we wanted to do, and we, in a way, prove, but also what the work of art is to really see through the eyes of an artificial intelligence, to really see that when it is not really served for humans, when humans are not looking, the machines are thinking in a different way. And when you watch these movies, maybe they don't make any sense, but you have to do the effort to really think, what was the machine thinking about?
So it sounds a bit like deliberately Jan Bot, this robot, makes mysterious movies for people to contemplate.
It makes mysterious movies, and it's part of your task to demystify them.
Right.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting, especially as a start. Stefan, how do you see the religion-AI relationship?
Yeah, I think related a bit to what Pablo was saying, we have a big tendency to view this AI as something mysterious that gives you an answer coming from somewhere, and we tend to treat it in a very human way. So even in the 60s, when chatbots were very rudimentary, people would talk to them for 5 minutes and decide that they were the best therapists they had ever had. So we tend to turn these AI programs into agents having some kind of intellectual, emotional life, and then potentially treat whatever answer they give us as some objective truth that we should adhere to. So I think there is a tendency there to look for answers in AI and in data in general, which we wouldn't be able to supply ourselves. I wouldn't necessarily say that they are going to be good answers. A lot of AI has very serious flaws, so it's not based on anything objective that's there. These AI programs aren't that great most of the time. They don't understand movies, for one. So in that sense, it can turn into a bit of a religion where you view these AI systems as agents telling you what to do without knowing where these demands are coming from.
So it's a bit like AI as an oracle, and sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it's nonsensical, but you can still believe in it.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks. Suyin, what's your perspective on religion and AI?
Well, I personally don't believe in it. So I don't think you should see AI as a religion. And if it's mystified, my goal is to demystify it and just to explain what it's about and to make it very practical for people, what is going to happen to us in a sense of how technology and AI is going to change our lives. And by understanding that, which is very non-religion wise, but maybe that's also my personal view on religion. It just helps us to clarify it and to be able to make right choices in our society. And it could be a form of religion, but then it would be more for me in a sense as people are searching for new, as maybe the traditional religions aren't that popular anymore in the daily life we have now. So people are searching for a higher goal and trying to find that in AI or in computers. But in my opinion, that's all made in our own heads and in our own minds and has nothing to do with a higher spirit or whatever.
So whereas perhaps you could say that people have this natural tendency to mystify, to take things as an oracle and then try to find the grains of truth in it. You, through education, try to demystify artificial intelligence.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And we also want to do that to prepare people on what your job's going to be like, or even by using your smartphone every day. A lot of big companies or organizations have a lot of data and on you, and I think most people in Holland already know that. They think, yeah, something with data, but a lot of people don't really know what that's about and what it means. And also for your job or your education, for the schools our children are in now, we have to prepare them more on what's happening.
Right.
And technological developments go so fast that we have to act on that now, I think.
Yeah. Stefan, I think your book was also trying to explain a lot about AI. Can you tell us a little bit about what the main message of that book was in terms of giving information about this unfamiliar territory that AI still is for a lot of people?
Yeah, I think it's very much in line with your goal as well. So I think to a large extent AI as a technology, it doesn't understand anything it's doing. It can help you automate some tasks where it's very routine. It doesn't require any contextual knowledge of, say, for example, sarcasm, which is very difficult for computers because you need to know something about the rest of the world. So AI isn't going to do anything particularly scary, but it's good at a few tasks. It can do them much faster than we can. But in a lot of the crucial parts of understanding, it's lacking, and it's those kinds of gaps between where it's good and where it's bad that we need to be educated on, and we need to be very careful about also in regulation and how we're using it in the kind of role we give to AI.
Right. But so sometimes people say, well, you know, I don't know exactly how electricity works, but I use the light switch all the time. So to what extent is it really necessary that people understand more about AI in order for us to be able to still control it?
Yeah, I think to some extent it helps. So of course you don't need to be able to program your own AI program, but if you're, say, at the tax agency and some algorithm tells you not to give someone extra benefits, then it helps to know that these algorithms aren't infallible and that there could be biases built into the algorithms. They could go wrong on lots of different ways, and to be able to critically reflect on these answers that a computer is giving you. And I think their additional knowledge and not seeing it as this mystic program is going to be of a lot of help.
Yeah, and also in regulation, if we're talking about ethical AI, if we want if we don't want the big companies that are inventing AI now and basically make their own rules because governments don't have laws yet, are always behind in making those laws, and if we want to be in control as a society, we need to educate people, and also the people in our governments that are making the laws. They need to be educated enough on the subject to know where to make the rules and how to use them, and also how to use the benefits of the AI.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that, of course. And as I said, I work at the Radboud University, so I'm very much into education about AI at the same time. You also sometimes think that mysteries are a very beautiful way of storytelling about ourselves and sense-making, right? I mean, how do you as an artist see that, Pablo? Is there something about the stories that AI can tell us, like your movie producing robot, or the stories that you can tell through AI that has, you know, useful or deeper or beautiful meaning for us?
Well, I think that as human beings, the way how we learn and the way how we find motivation to do things and to act in the world is by listening to stories and sharing stories. This is an element that all religions have. I'm more familiar with Western religions, and the big Western religions are always about a group of people, the chosen people, and the other people who happen to be the bad people. And there's some difficulties, and in the end, at least the representative of one of these people is the one who wins, and that really connect us as a group of humans. And it's not only that it makes sense of our world, but it also motivates us to do things and to make decisions. And what happens now is that we have so much data circulating that as humans, as individuals, we don't have the capacity to process all this data. And what artificial intelligence algorithms, or what we call nowadays artificial intelligence, is doing is sort of pre-filtering all this data and telling us a story. And by telling us a story, we can make sense out of that. Now, the thing is, to what extent, how much authority are we giving to these machines to tell us a story? And how critical can we be about these stories?
Well, that's a fascinating question. So how critical do you think we should be? Or do you think that maybe we are already too critical about these stories? There might be a difference here between an artistic perspective and an educational perspective, right? Are we not demystifying too soon? It's not necessarily a question to you, it's basically for everyone. How do you balance both these aspects?
Well, I can say something. I think that first of all, we need as a society to become very aware about how we manage data and how this data is coming to us, because if you think, for example, not really like seeing the present, if you think of social media, all the information that we are giving and all the information that we are receiving, and the way how this information is coming to us in our news feeds, it is the product of artificial intelligence that is sorting the different events that we see, like things that a friend of us is, something that happened to our friend, or something to happen to somebody you don't know so well, or a piece of advertisement. Everything comes articulated in one narrative that is a narrative that is built by an algorithm. Now the thing is, if you think of social media, especially the big networks, they have a goal, and that goal is to sell you advertising. And you have the most intelligent people, some of the most intelligent people in the world working in these corporations, and what they are trying to do is all the time building the perfect algorithm to keep you stuck in front of the screen. So it doesn't matter what story they're telling you. What is important is that you're in front of the screen.
Yeah.
And it's important to become aware of those things.
Yeah. So you think that maybe we have a powerful storytelling tool available, but we're using it more to get people hooked than to give them meaningful stories?
Yes, but I think those companies that created those platforms are the ones that give the opportunity for people to tell stories. If a neutral government would create that platform and would get the people on their platforms to connect with each other and in a non-commercial way and not in the bubble just to sell advertising, I mean they also there is a need for people to connect with each other, and as long as we don't create that as a society, those companies have done it and will become only bigger and stronger. So we can say, yeah, you shouldn't be on those platforms, and all your data is being used for extra advertising, and you're being caught into that. But we do not have a good alternative for our children that want to connect on those platforms with other children, and the whole society wants that. So we should start thinking about that as well.
Mm. I seem to remember from the history of religion that also in the religious storytelling a lot of money was being made, right, by the religious institutions. So in that sense it might be a repetition of moves. But the point you raise, I think, is a very important one, or that you're both now are raising, because it's also a question about monopolizing a certain technology. Right, that the problem maybe is not in the technology itself, the one that we're just discussing, but also in who has the power to control it. The dominance of the market by companies like Google and Amazon and Facebook, etc., is maybe more the reason why so many people are concerned about AI than the AI itself. What do you think?
I think that is true, and maybe the only way to solve that is to educate more people, to create an answer, and also to have more discussions like this on what do we find ethically right, what do we want as a society, are we only aiming to create more money and to make more money? Is that the way we want to live with each other, or do we want another society? And if so, what do we need to use? How do we use technology to create that?
Stefan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I agree here. So, on this side of how we are using AI, we should be more careful. On the other hand, it's also easy to forget a lot of the benefits that it's bringing. So, it depends, I think, ethically on what type of application we're looking at. So, social media, yes, cases where they're making decisions that directly affect your life, we should be very careful about. On the other hand, using AI to improve product quality in a factory, probably we don't care quite so much who owns exactly that algorithm, as long as it improves the products or the healthcare that we are getting. Exactly, sure. So in these kinds of situations where the AI isn't taking away any of your autonomy or isn't making choices for you, I think the situation will be very different. So the ethics are going to depend on the application.
Right. So we're not moving from AI as a religion to AI as a revolution just yet, if I understand this correctly.
No,
There's a best of both worlds here.
We don't have to. It's perfectly possible to have both.
Yes. Oh, yes. I fully agree. I think it's I think it's really necessary to educate people as well on the benefits of AI, and maybe even do that to emphasize that more, because I think in the media, media tends to look at the negative sides of the effects that AI or computers or data can have, as where there are so many good things that it can bring us as well. So I fully agree that, yeah.
Thanks. So just to continue a little bit more on this point of religion, I mean, very much connected, of course, to religion is the topic of values and human values, which is also connected to storytelling. And art, of course, is also very valuable. Do you see a connection between art and values, both in the financial and in the moral sense, Pablo? And does AI play a role in there? Is there recent art that really works precisely on that connecting point?
Well, I find that it's more interesting to see this parallel between data and value, because in the end, what is artificial intelligence now is a bunch of different technologies that maybe will change in the future. Artificial intelligence is nowadays a concept or a notion that is mostly what we see on the media. Data, I think, is something that it has been before, and now there is more and more, and there will be more and more in the future. Can you remind me about the question?
No, the question is about this value creation. Like, so in art, you see that certain aspects of our lives or our worlds are being created. Or recreated, like you do with the bot. You use existing pieces and you recombine them. AI is playing an increasing role in art and in the production of art, like the crypto art that you hear a lot about these days. And at the same time, you also see that AI is playing a big role, think about blockchain, in the creation of financial value. And I was just wondering whether that double role of AI in the creation of value, both in the moral and in the financial sense, is a coincidence, or whether there's a deeper connection here?
Well, I think what happens, you're talking about crypto art. Crypto art is a kind of, it's a way of distributing artworks, some of them that are physical, but many of them that are digital artworks that are circulating in the so-called blockchain. So the blockchain is, to put it in simple terms, is a ledger, is like a spreadsheet that keeps a registration of all the transactions that have happened in one network. So I don't know if I'm being...
I totally follow you, yeah.
What we're most familiar with is the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is a form. It's a form of currency that takes place on the blockchain, and nowhere else. And we believe in that. We believe that this value, this currency, we believe that you can convert it into dollars, or that you convert it into euros, which is something more of the physical world. What is happening now is that it's not only this digital currency like Bitcoin that is taking place on different blockchains. There is also artworks that are registered and that people can buy, and that you can that you can display in virtual worlds that are completely digital, and where you can buy a piece of land. So you can, if you want to have your own museum, or if you want to display your digital artwork, you have to buy a piece of land, and then you place it there, and people who walk around can consume it. Is this something that makes any sense or not? Well, I think that in the end, values are something very personal, and the more people is part of this world, the more valuable it will become.
So it's very much a social phenomenon, actually. It's a little bit like with real money, right? I mean, you have the paperwork, and as long as we all decide that you can exchange this for real objects, food or whatever, then it carries the value that we attribute to it collectively. Is that, Stefan, how you also see it? Like with blockchain, that we're creating through a collective process something meaningful, and then as long as we keep believing in it, I don't want to use the religious terms too often, but it sounds very related. As long as we collectively believe in it, then the value is there.
Yeah, I think in these cases, definitely. And with art in general, to some extent, it's a matter of whether people appreciate it actively for it to become valuable. If there's no one looking at your piece of art, then it might have some value, but it's going to be less compared to something that millions of people can see in a museum or online. So there's a social process going on here, and the AI systems that we are creating are based on what socially is going on more generally. So not just monetary value, but all kinds of values are seeping into these AI systems as we're making them and as they learn from data that we give them. So the most obvious examples are, of course, cases where it goes wrong, where algorithms become sexist or racist, and so on.
It was this chatbot, right, that was taught the wrong kind of labels for lots of things by users that were online?
Sure, yeah. Tai, I think.
Tai,
by Microsoft, and Amazon trying to make recruitment systems which categorically refused to hire women, so that if your CV so much as mentioned the word woman, you were automatically rejected, simply because Amazon wasn't hiring a lot of female computer engineers. So this kind of thing,
programmers were all male.
Yeah, so exactly. So the computer decided women weren't good candidates. So this kind of value creation happens a lot, whether we want it to or not, because of this reliance on data, ultimately.
But I think it's also an interesting thing how men, people, human beings, are creative in using art, digital art now, as something, to trade in or to make use of it, but also to display it and to get more people looking at their art. So I think you could also see it as a very good example of a form how humans are using technology now to work together and to using the technology in making progress, as we did all these ages with making paintings and making art objects. Now we do that with the digital form of art, but still as human beings, creating it, using it, selling it, and doing exactly the same thing as we are already doing for centuries with art.
It's a new kind of paint, almost. After all, you're using algorithms to create art.
Yeah, also related to the element of value, something that came to mind is, well, when we think about the future and when we think about artificial intelligence and all new technologies that we're now building as a society, often we look into the past. I mean, what we are living today with the big technology companies now. Everybody wants to go to the moon and go through the space. And to a great extent, I mean, there is a logical reason that makes sense, but it's also because all the big entrepreneurs that are into these enterprises, they grew up with a form of science fiction and with dreams that were forged by stories that they saw on TV or the stories that they read in books when they were children. Something that I was thinking before coming to the show is of a movie that is from the late 60s that is called Alphaville. It's a French director called Jean-Luc Godard, and it's a science fiction. And in this city called Alphaville, well, the city is controlled by an artificial intelligence. That is a computer. Is called the Alpha 60, and the Alpha 60 regulates everything. And there are some things that this computer doesn't understand because it doesn't have the capacity. One of them are the concept of love, the concept of emotions. So these words either get banned from this city, or they get a complete different meaning. And that has a lot to do with value. When we think about art, or when we think about any collaboration that we're having now with a computer or with some kind of artificial intelligence, well, these computers are all the time thinking in terms of values. They think in a way that is completely different than the way how we think. And when we have to negotiate with them, when we're collaborating into maybe, let's say, positioning a work of art, or maybe, let's say, Netflix wants to make a new TV show, and then they go into and they run some algorithms to see what is the consumer behavior. All those things, we have to also become aware that that this collaboration between computer and humans, that probably we're understanding different things when they're trying to give us some input.
Yeah. This brings us a little bit to the topic of autonomy in relation to AI. We speak about artificial agents as systems that are capable of doing something, at least partially, of their own initiative or on their own initiative. There's a sense of autonomy that these systems have that maybe is not fully developed like we attribute to human beings, but nonetheless, they're less passive than paint, just to mention one very silly example. So in that sense, sorry, one more question for you, and then I really go back to the others. But when you made your movie-producing robot, to what extent is the artist you, and to what extent is the bot the artist? How do you feel that?
That's a good question, and it's for Bram and I as creators of Jambot, but also for every creator of algorithms. I would say that, and this is my opinion, and I think this is something that it's an object of debate also in the European Union when it comes to create, I think, digital entities. To what extent do we give this full agency and responsibility to an algorithm, and to what extent is the company that creates them? In our case, we let this algorithm create these artworks.
But you still feel yourself to be the artist?
We are the artists because we are the ones who have to bring this work. I am here speaking. I'm not bringing the artwork here. Maybe if I bring the artwork, nobody will understand it. And so And this is an interesting question when it comes to art. Also, you have now a lot of algorithms that can create and can reproduce artworks that maybe Bach could have made. Let's say a musical piece. Or if you put all the work of Shakespeare, you put it in a large database, it can create more of Shakespeare work. So the question of originality there is like, okay, this, why do we need Shakespeare if we have...
Well, he was the first, you know, so we feed the algorithm with Shakespeare, not the other way around, so that would be a difference.
Why do we need new writers if we can just take Shakespeare, or we can take the one that is best rated and create new novels? And I think, for me, the answer is that there is a difference between originality and authenticity. Right. And originality nowadays is not that relevant, because you can have machines making original artworks or original anything. But authenticity means that you have to stand behind it, and that you have to, in a way, tell the story and embody that story and take responsibility for whatever it is that is produced under your name.
So that's a very interesting question, Stefan and Suyin. I would like to ask you, because also the documentary, of course, very much talked about the possibility maybe to live forever as a data stream, you know, a digital twin. I don't think that phrase was used in the documentary, but it was clear that they were hinting at the same topic. You recreate, or you continue the pattern that someone produced in life through self-quantification via artificial systems, and then the person continues to live. And here I think especially this question about authenticity is crucial. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think given how the technology is currently, it's very hard to imagine how this would work. So if we look at your examples of the Bachs being produced, or the videos, the Shakespeare, it all ends up being copying essentially what someone has put into this algorithm. So of course it's new in the sense that no one has written those words before, no one has made that particular combination of paint, but there's no story behind it. The computer doesn't have any intention to write this story to talk about forbidden love or anything of the sort. So there's something very crucial missing there, I think, which until we can get it into a computer, turning your brain into a set of data, isn't going to get you the kind of autonomous, conscious person that you would like to be.
So rehashing my digital regularities is not going to make me live forever in any meaningful way, if I understand you correctly.
Not if we look at what we currently have.
Right.
Of course, these people talk about 100 years into the future and no one knows what will happen there, but it looks very, very, very difficult to pull this off.
Thanks.
So it's kind of daydreaming still about what could happen.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm tempted now to go in the direction of the C word, consciousness.
Of course.
You know, in the documentary too, there was continuously mentioned as this big challenge, sometimes the big divide, but sometimes also maybe more as a fantasy or ephemeral, doesn't really exist. It's all mere seeming, as Daniel Dennett says sometimes. How do you see that now in AI? Do we have a system? I'm not looking at anyone in particular, just whoever. But all movies basically have one plot, which is why I sometimes find them very boring to watch. At some point, the machine becomes self-aware. And then there's this little part that I always call science pornography, where they try to explain how it happens. It's something about cyboplasm or exponential rates, or there's just a blah blah story, and then it happened.
Yeah, and I think that is sort of a fantasy, because it's a fantasy of people, and they create it in movies. But in my opinion, it makes people more conscious about computers and about robots and so people are getting more scared of it and reject it, because before you know it, they take over the world and they're going to ruin our society or whatever. So I always think, yeah, we're not there yet. We're not going to maybe never get that, and let's concentrate on the positive sides and not on this because this feeds the scary theories about computers more and more, which, yeah, in my opinion, is not a reality.
It's the scary story about the hell that awaits us if we let these machines continue uncontrolled. At the same time, machine learning, deep learning neural networks, of course, is also a reason to wonder how we can control these machines, and we cannot predict very well in which direction they will develop, or James Lovelock used the word evolve. How do you see that problem of controllability or unpredictability, and are we not too optimistic maybe?
Well, I think there's a problem of control in terms of how we make our decisions around these algorithms. So, of course, we're going to use them for different applications, and the question is, how are you going to treat the outputs of the algorithm? Are you just going to give all of your autonomy away and let the computer do the work, or will there be some critical reflection afterwards, and then the decision is ours but informed by a computer? I think there is a very difficult challenge, also because very often you don't understand why the computer is telling you what it's telling you. But in terms of consciousness, no, I think that's something that's very far away. So even the neural networks nowadays are mainly doing statistical analysis on a large bunch of data, and then they tell you something about the patterns that it finds in the data, which may or may not actually be there. There's still plenty of cases where they see a yellow shovel and say it's a banana because it's yellow. So there's nothing mysterious going on there on the consciousness level.
James Lovelock had an answer to this question. He asked, how do you know? How do you know that these machines are not conscious in some sort of way, and you know, it might grow, and we just are not capable of understanding in what sense they are there as a subject? That's a tough question, right? I mean, how do you know?
Sure. I think for the kind of human understanding, that type of consciousness, what you would be looking for first and foremost is conceptual understanding and intentionality, that you're doing something for a goal that you have in mind, that you think about the world in conceptual terms rather than just let me connect this data point to that data point, and then the next one follows automatically via these standard rules. And that type of understanding we don't have yet in these machines, and that's something that you can see fairly clearly from the mistakes they're making. They wouldn't be
so you think there's behavioral
stupid.
Evidence?
Yeah, I think in this case they wouldn't be making the types of decisions, let's say writing about fires underwater, or making these types of conceptual mistakes.
I had a conversation with a chatbot that won the Leibniz Prize, which is a simplified version of the Turing test, for 5 years in a row. So apparently not so bad. It was Cookie. And I invented the conversation with her. So I said I was not feeling too well. And she said, oh, that's terrible. I said, no, I feel useless. She said, no, that cannot be true. There must be something you're good at, which was a very nice, empathic kind of response, I thought. Yeah. And then I invented that I used to play guitar, but that I had lost the control over my fingers. And then she answered, did you try looking for a hand? Because that's where you can find fingers. And that was sort of like, you know, the curtain of the Wizard of Oz has been torn away, and you get to see the underlying, because statistically, of course, that makes sense. A lot of sentences correlate with sentences about fingers. But there's no actual understanding. Now, I'm not saying that this is an unavoidable problem. Of course, Cookie can do better and never make that mistake again. But the point is, it shows in what way they don't understand. Yeah, so that I found that a very revealing kind of example. That for me, whatever that's worth, makes me sort of still thinking that there's no real understanding there. I think Penrose, in the second part, the second clip, was trying to explain precisely this. They can go through the motions to a very high level, sometimes better than we do, but the real understanding. How would you educate people to understand that difference?
Yeah, in our opinion, the way we talk about this is already on such a high level, and with people, the three of you, who have such a great understanding of how AI works. What we think is that 98% of the population has no clue yet, and the gap, the difference is becoming way bigger, and that is what we need to get closer. So we need to first educate more people on the basics before they can even think about this. And not everybody has to understand this. They only need to know how to use it and where to say stop and where to go. So I am not an expert. So on a lot of topics you mentioned, I cannot give the answer because I don't know. But I do hope that, like the chat, you have a conversation with the computer. Yeah. The way we see that now is in a chatbot. When you call if you go to a store and you need to get an answer quickly, and of course you get it better and quicker from a chatbot instead of being on hold for 4 hours. So there it can help us, but it's all very simple still, and it's very functional still. And to get it into a level where it really has a conversation with you, yeah, I think why just have a conversation with a real human being and use the computers, use the AI on where it brings us further and helps us as a society and as a human being.
Now, I also have maybe a question for all of you, and for me personally, the issue of consciousness in some form of artificial intelligence, I really wonder what is so relevant about it. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, this question of consciousness and human-like consciousness in history in the past has been there, and I see the urgency. For example, when the Europeans went to the Americas, and then they didn't know, what to do with the Indians, because they didn't know if they were animals or if they had consciousness like humans.
Did they have a soul or not?
If they had a soul or not, because that would make the big difference if whether to treat them like humans or just treat them as slaves and kill them. Now with artificial intelligence, I see that there are many other topics that are ethically more, in my opinion, more urgent, like, for example, who owns the algorithm or things like that. And I understand that from a philosophical perspective, the question of consciousness, it is worthwhile. But maybe you can also give me some more insight of what would be the...
Well, I think you just already formulated one of the reasons why consciousness matters, that if these machines would have a genuine awareness, we should no longer be allowed to own them. And so there's this Human Brain Project which tries to emulate from the molecular level up everything we know about the human brain in a supercomputer, and it's not going to work, and they've changed the aim a little bit, but originally that was the aim. And so I asked them the question at some point, but if you would succeed, would you then be allowed to turn off your supercomputer, or have you just lost a supercomputer? So that's the question. The ownership is related to the awareness issue. And that has huge consequences also for responsibility, I would guess. So sooner or later we have to deal with this question. And from a religious perspective, of course, if I want to be immortal and I want to upload myself into a machine, I want to know if I will be there not just as a functionally equivalent of myself, but if I also will have the capacity to experience. Because without it, what's the fun?
Yeah, actually,
so that would be my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, actually, the most plausible idea of or most plausible way that we can imagine nowadays on how to time travel or space travel would be literally making a copy paste of ourselves, which would imply, because if to copy our DNA and to find a way to materialize it somewhere else means that we can duplicate ourselves, but then it doesn't imply that we have to delete ourselves.
No. Of course, you can
So
digitally clone yourself as many times as you like. But the crucial question for immortality, I mean, as long as you're dependent, I think that was one of the big arguments in the whole documentary. If we want to become immortal, then we have to escape the boundaries and the limitations of our biological hardware or wetware, if you prefer. And then if we go in the digital direction, we want to know whether experience can really be there. Because if it's not, a lot of the points of being there disappear. You can still do work, but you're becoming a machine. I think that's the main concern of that part of the documentary. Anyway, we have a few minutes left. I'm checking to see if we have any questions from the chat. Okay, well, in that case, I would like to give you the floor to say something about a project that you're currently starting or working on, and in relation to AI, of course, and explain to us why you find that really interesting or stimulating or a big challenge. Can you start?
Should I start? Yes. Well, as said, we would like to educate people. We think with I'm Digital, we've created a short course, which is partly an e-learning and partly through workshops and sessions. And we cooperate with companies, we cooperate with universities, schools, to give basic knowledge on data, AI, and to educate people on how work will look like in a few years. There are reports from the World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs report from 2020 that says that 40% of the jobs that will change within 5 years. So a lot of people in Holland, like 4 million people, should change the way they work now and should be re-educated. So we have to start now if we want to reach that goal. And so that's what we do. We try to educate them. We've started with the Dutch AI course, and now with I'm Digital, create awareness for a lot of people that think, yeah, it's going to happen, but it doesn't affect me. And we want to make sure everybody knows it also affects you.
Right. Thank you. Stefan, you think, what's your next big challenge?
Yes.
Project?
So I'm going to do more research soon in Delft, like I said in the beginning, which is going to focus on the explainability of these algorithms. So as we started off with in the beginning of the meetup, is that these neural networks and AI programs can seem very mystical, and they will just give you an answer and you don't really know where it's coming from, other than that you put a lot of data into it. So what I am going to be working on is to see how we can make it clearer where these decisions are coming from, what they're based on. Hopefully also look at what kind of values we are putting into these programs, so that based on that we can make better decisions using these algorithms rather than just copying whatever it tells you and hope for the best.
Thanks. Well, looking forward to read your papers. Pablo, what's your next project or your big challenge?
Yes, currently I am I'm applying for a grant to do a research on what is known as NFTs, which is a form of digital art that circulates on the blockchain. We made a little bit of mention to this. And more specifically, what we want to do is to take the challenge of, in a certain period of time, to bring some of the a fragment of the more than 20,000 artworks that Jan-Bot did, and mint them in the environment of crypto art. And the challenge of this is the challenge that we're imposing to ourselves is to publish them in what we would consider would be the most ethical way possible, because there's a lot of controversy on this space of crypto art, It has been a lot in the news in the last month. There was a couple of artworks of a very popular artist right now called Beeple, who sold one of his artworks, I think, for something like $30 or $40 million. I already lost the number, but it's like a very high amount for a digital work that doesn't even imply copyrights or anything. And well, there is an ecological aspect that all these activities that take place in the blockchain are very ecologically consuming. And also, if we think of the artist community in the world, in the Netherlands and everywhere, well, there is a major question, which is what is the role of artists in times of digital technologies and times of blockchain, and how, and connected to that, how artists are going to survive. And with this research, what we want to do is to find this way of, within the possibilities, to see what's the most ethical way of publishing work of Jan Bot and document it in the form of maybe a short documentary that could be helpful, informative, and hopefully also inspiring for people of the creative community.
Well, wonderful, really inspiring work from all three of you. So we're looking forward to a bright future. I think our time is up. So we're ending this program. Thanks to the speakers. Thanks also, of course, to Ronja Bosse and Venna Bere and the Pletterij, a really spectacularly efficient place to do these shows in. So thank you all very much, and till we meet again.